A beautiful morning to you, a beautiful Friday morning, I need to add, for those of you who want that extra oomph. Welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Good morning and welcome to the show. I'm Kayla Megwa, our daily dose of sunshine.
Indeed. And you can't deny that there will be sunshine on this show. I mean, right now, the temperature in Abuja is 26 degrees Celsius, but don't let that fool you. The sun is going to be out in full blaze over the Federal Capital Territory.
The strangest cold.
Yeah, in the morning. Yeah,
this weather.
Yes.
It doesn't feel the same. It feels as though something is off with the weather in the FCT. By this time, we would be wearing hoodies and covering up, but there's a lot of heat in the city.
Well, I think it's a little cool in the morning, and from what we can see right now, it's 26, 27 degrees in the morning. It's quite cool. Sometimes I even have my kids wearing cardigans too.
Yeah, in the mornings.
Yes, but by afternoon, you
really
actually have to start to beg the sun. Yes. Please take it easy. Well, just in case you're looking for sunshine where you are, this is the program that brings it to you. Right now, we're going to be starting off with an overview of a place where you might want to relax if you're in the FCT, perhaps visiting. FCT is known to be hosting a lot of conferences and, events of the such. If you are just going to be in till Saturday, or you live in the FCT and you haven't been here in a while, the Jabi Lake Mall, or the Jabi Lake, is the overview we're bringing you this morning. And of course, there is a beautiful mall right next to Jabi Lake Mall. Quite a number of residential developments have also come up around the lake, but just in case you're wondering, that lake was dug to, it was man-made, dug to be able to provide water to the residents of the FCT. But in recent times, it has just become a place for fun and relaxation.
Indeed. A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And affordable fun.
Affordable fun.
Indeed.
And then if you have pets like I do, it's a lovely place to take your dog. For some reason, dogs just really love this area, and then the ambience, and it's properly organized. That's one of the things I like about this. They started cleaning it up regularly. Initially, that used to be the problem, you'd see, rubbish in the grass area. And then the exercise area in the Jabi, in and around this place we're looking at right now, is also a very popular part of the FCT. A lot of people wake up in the morning and go there for all kinds of exercise, aerobics. And I think one of the most beautiful things is watching the sunrise from this place. If you get to the exercise section of Jabi Lake, or you go to where there's this balloon, I don't know the name of this sport now, but you go and you enter into this balloon and then you paddle underwater. So that happens at this place as well. If you do get there very early and you catch that sunrise, it's wonderful. So it's a wonderful thing.
Here you go. Can't say we didn't do anything for you on this program. Your tour guide Kayla has told you all that you can do at the Jabi Lake Mall.
Affordable fun.
So take a moment.
Believe in affordable fun.
Take a moment to take it all in, the beauty of the aerial shot of the Jabi Lake Mall. Well, we know a lot of what we know because we read. We go about, and we know that we have to get an education. Yes, and we find ways to transmit. I mean, the only reason why Kayla and I can be here this morning talking to you and have the leverage to talk to you is because we have an education. The Minister of Education has been speaking and said something that really struck a chord with me yesterday, something about the future of Nigeria and why we cannot, play with the quality of education that we're given to Nigerian children. Do take a listen.
Deterioration of their academic output. That is similar to what's happening when we allow exam to leak. The students that would normally work hard to pass those exams would not work hard again. They will now turn to being bad by now looking for those exams, looking for those questions. And I'm going to tell you straight, we have to be true. I know cameras, we have several cameras here, but let's wash our dirty laundry in the public. That's how we can improve ourselves. There's nothing to hide. This Ministry of Education, the President has a clear mandate. We have to provide high qualitative education to our citizens and directly and indirectly improve our human capital development. I'll tell you today, Nigeria Human Capital Index is one of the lowest in the world. We have a Human Capital Index of 0.32. And I'll tell you what that means. What that means. Human Capital Index of 0.32 means a child born in Nigeria today would only have 30% chance of unleashing his entire potential in his entire life.
Well, that's certainly something that should worry all of us, that children given birth to in this country only have a 30% chance to unleash all that they have been given, endowed with by their creator to be able to, give to the world. Yeah, we celebrate Nigerian children, across the world when they're doing great things. And we see, we say, oh, these are our kids, these are Nigerian children. So there's nothing wrong. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with the brain of the Nigerian child. But the question is, what is the environment in which that child has in the country to be able to, to be able to use all of the gifts that child has been endowed with within our country? What is the environment here like? And that is a question that should bother all of us, Kayla.
I want to be able to say that things are about to get better. Let me explain why. The conversation has started. Mm-hmm. This is something that we've noted for a very long time. The human capital of our country, it's its biggest resource. And it's that human capital that I find that in many ways has been ignored over the years. The conversation about building our human capital, it's a very important one, and at least it has started now. And I'm glad there is a minister. He said, it felt like dirty laundry. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to air our dirty laundry out there. But it has actually gotten to where we cannot pretend that we don't have this dirty laundry anymore. Human capital index of 0.32%. What sort of people are you growing? And then apart from that, you're building infrastructure. We've been talking recently about theft of manhole covers and crime and criminality in the FCT. So basically what you're doing is you create infrastructure, and the people that you're creating the infrastructure for are looking at you. Sure, you will go home. And when you go, they will steal the manhole cover, they will steal the electricity, they will steal the lights, they will cut down the poles. They'll do all kinds of things that will make me and Mark be cringing here in the studio. How could you do such a thing? It's human capital index that is being ignored. So no matter what kind of development you're doing, no matter what kind of growth you're trying to have in your country, as long as you have ignored the people that you are doing that for, you're basically winking in the dark. Because as long as the quality of their life continues to deteriorate, they will rob you. They will not see these things as part of their own. They will see it as something that they should protect. And when it comes to, the 30% chance of, unleashing our full potential if you're in this country. So what are you going to do about that?
Big question. I think
what are you going to do about it? What next? Okay, so we've noted it. What happens
That's
next?
the question for all of us to answer, as a matter of fact. That's the question because education, thankfully, is not just something that is for the federal government. Yes, the federal government gives direction and gives policy, but state governments also have an input. Local governments, which are now beginning to have autonomy, also have an input. They are responsible for basic education. So the question is, if you listen to this and you're worried about this, in a world that is getting very competitive, in a world that is becoming a global village, in a world that, President Trump is looking to slam tariffs on everyone, that everyone should be producing their own talent. What are we going to do? What are we going to do about this particular information which we've just heard? It should just be something that enters one ear and flies out the next. Yeah. So we have to do, this is a clarion call, and and also an emergency call. So the minister, Tunji Alausa, speaking there, I hope that word isn't just something that we but something that we do something about. Well, let's take a break at this moment, and we'll be right back to take a look at the main matter for the day. Stay with us. Well, indeed, quite a number of developments have been happening right here in the FCT. Kayla did make reference to one of them, which is people destroying infrastructure that has already been built, stealing manhole covers, felling electricity poles, in some instances street light poles, so that they can go and sell these things. Apparently, those are not the only things that are happening in the FCT. Also in the FCT, something quite shocking happened here a few days ago, and NAPTIP, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, sent out a statement, saying that they had been able to apprehend a bishop, a religious leader, who was said to have raped a 12-year-old girl, put under the care of his family. This is supposed to be a religious leader. And not just that they were also able to burst a baby factory somewhere in the Ushafa area of the Federal Capital Territory. And it does raise very strong questions as to what exactly is going on. The baby factory was something that we used to hear of in a certain part of the country, which seems now to be on the down low. It's not clear. Maybe it's just not being as reported as it used to be, or maybe we're truly making strides in eradicating it. But that is now beginning to rear its head in the Federal Capital Territory means that all is not over. If indeed we're making progress in one part of the country, it could be that people are just beginning to disperse and maybe owning these factories, these baby factories in other parts of the country. But, to discuss this and take a look at this particular issue, this tide that we seem to be seeing again in the FCT, is somebody who knows more than a thing about it. We have with us this morning, joining us via phone, is Madam Julie Okadonli, who used to be the Director General of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP. Dame Julie Okadonli, thank you for joining us this morning on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm sure that you heard this piece of news coming from the agency which you used to head. I do not know whether it's something that, were you a little shocked that this was beginning to happen in the Federal Capital Territory?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, I do not think it is new. I think it's always been there. The baby factory phenomenon has always been in the FCT. We have a lot of maternity that has come across Nigeria in places. So, of course, it wasn't that obvious at the time. It definitely would have strung its head at some point.
What could be responsible for this particular phenomenon?
Very quickly, I can tell you without even thinking, we have this serious cultural problem. I call it cultural stigmatization of ladies who can't get pregnant and are stigmatized from being able to have babies. I'm not excusing that at all, but I can tell you that it makes a lot of women very, very desperate to have babies. And so, desperate guys, devise the means of getting this baby, then making kids where young produce babies for these women to buy. Secondly, we have parents, and so they find solely in the factory where have their babies and they keep them there to keep having babies to sell. You know, so there's so many factors responsible for this and these baby factories. Apart people nature of the economy and the greed of us, you know, that comes with it.
It is very troubling indeed, this development we're seeing around baby factories. And you've just talked about women who, you know, who are trying to have babies and who are unable to, and who are stigmatized and somehow have to produce babies. But we're beginning to see a sector now, even though it's unclear just how regulated that sector is, where in the medical sector, where IVF hospitals are springing up. Surrogacy is becoming a word that more Nigerian women speak or more Nigerian families know about. And I'm wondering, you know, could this also be linked to the rise in that?
A lot of
Madam Julie Okadonli, we will have to get back to you again, because it does appear that the connection with the phone call also is a bit faulty this morning. We'll have to reestablish that connection and we'll come back to you shortly. But Kayla, you know, quite a number of issues to be able to look at here, you know, with this particular story, which we've just seen, NAPTIP talking about. The former DG says she's not surprised that this is not a new phenomenon, so to speak. And she spoke about around stigma, you know, that comes around for many families, women especially, who are unable to have children. It is quite troubling, isn't it?
It is, and you know, it's. I'm really sad that the network connection to the former DG is not very clear, because you know she's one person who has been following through on these baby factories across the country. It's been a very embarrassing situation, and she's absolutely correct when it comes to the stigma around not being able to bear children. You see, because you're educated, because we're more enlightened, we can talk about things like surrogacy. For many families, the concept of surrogacy is even wrong in their mindset. I think we also have someone else who's joined us in the Zoom right now who can talk to us a little bit more about this situation. We have Dorothy Njamanze also joining us this morning. Dorothy, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
For those who don't know, Dorothy does a lot of work when it comes to abuse, and especially abuse against women and girls, and protection of women and girls from situations that they may not have a lot of control over. When you saw the story, Dorothy, on the situation with the baby factories, and of course that man of God who has been sentenced right now, you know, according to the statement by NAPTIP, what was the first thought that came to your mind?
Well, for me, anything that shows that the justice system is working, it's a fantastic development for me, you know. Anything that moves the needle towards the direction of support for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, it's a fantastic development, and I'm happy with that, you know. So kudos to NAPTIP. But again, it's a reminder that we're our best support system. NAPTIP does not sit down and get information without proper budgeting for NAPTIP. You know, NAPTIP will not give us the results that we need from NAPTIP. And again, you know, survivor-centered responses. Now we have talked about what happened to perpetrators. The next question is, so what is the situation of survivors? In what condition are they? You know, what kind of social developments is going on to help the survivors that exist, you know, in all the stories across the board. It's a very critical thing. It's not just about accounting for perpetrators, you know, it's balanced when we can account for survivors as well, you know, in the stories.
I mean, it's a very important point that you noted there, and I think that's coming from the fact that you do deal with survivors, you know. So after the conviction, what happens to the people who were involved in this matter? But before we get to that, Dorothy, I want to be able to get your thoughts on baby factories. We saw that very embarrassing documentary from the BBC So I think it was in December that documentary came out, and it made all of us. It's called Nigeria's Miracle Babies, and it's a syndrome. Listening to Commissioner of Women Affairs in that documentary, where she was talking about how pervasive this has become, how you go to they have to raid brothels and hotels, and in her state, at least that was in Enugu state, I think, where they actually get these girls and then get them pregnant and then lie to these women in these miracle centers that you're going to have a miracle baby, and then it is a child that has been born in these miracle centers that is given to this thriving business that has been going on for a very long time. It's not the first time we've heard this story, though, Dorothy. What's wrong? Why can't we end this?
Well, simple. The access to justice routes. Justice is very expensive in Nigeria. That's one thing. And so because of how expensive justice is in Nigeria, many perpetrators are capitalizing on the fact that so many people would rather just not deal, whether it is the people directly involved or it is the other people who are neighbors. Sometimes you go and report a situation and it just puts you inside trouble and all of that. So justice is very expensive. And again, the dynamics to the baby factory syndrome in Nigeria. I work with a survivor support center in Abuja, and one thing we have noticed is that the dynamics vary. We can't wait for the manifestation in one way. The elections are coming. Now that the elections are coming, there's another dynamic to this thing. Many perpetrators are targeting children, amongst other things. And, so there are different reasons that people have manufactured to justify their baby factory. Election happens to be one of them that I am aware of. I have seen people who, there are just too many dynamics to it, but my point in all of it is whatever the dynamic that manifests, we should get to a place where the law is supportive of whoever, gives a hint. In fact, the law is proactive because a lot of these things, can be picked up from social media. A lot of these things can be picked up from different aspects. So the laws should be proactive. The law should support people. The law should support witnesses. The law should support survivors. When the laws and the available systems support survivors and witnesses adequately, more of these things, more of these vices will be better tracked. And as far as it's better tracked, it means that there are higher chances of achieving justice. But for now, all of these are very limited. There's a lot of corruption in a lot of systems, amongst other things. So primarily, we should have proactive systems. We should have honest systems that are willing to receive feedback, so that if there are lapses, you can fix your lapses, just to be able to support humanity. Because what are you existing for as law enforcement or as a court or whatever it is, and as an access to justice stakeholder, if you're not supporting humanity, if your systems are not humane, amongst other things, so that you can tell this is the way they're stifling victims, this is the way they're stifling witnesses, because I've given you critical stakeholders who, if they're tampered with, a lot of things will not make the light of the day. The police cases or the NAPTIP cases, law enforcement cases will be messed up. So protection of witnesses, protection of victims, supporting victims to stay alive enough to testify as many times as they are needed. These are critical needs. So do the victims need shelters? Do the witnesses need to relocate from the original places of abode? If they relocate, do they have school fees for their children? Do they have food to eat? All these critical things. We need more humane systems so that the full details of everything law enforcement needs to thrive, access to justice needs to thrive.
Yes.
Will come up and be utilized by law enforcement to access justice. It's all for the sanity of our environment.
You mentioned two things when it's survival and elections and how these play a part in this baby factory thing. I'm going to get, you can respond to that much later. But then I think what I want to find out from you is, you talked about the access to justice and how this is an actual problem. But isn't there a cultural aspect to it as well? We heard the former DG of NAPTIP, Dame Julie Oka-Donley, speaking just now. And she said, basically, as long as these cultural restrictions exist, as long as there's stigma against you if you don't have children, where you're forced to always, there's a rule, you must have a child, and you must give birth like the Israelite women for some reason. So other alternatives like surrogacy, these things are not really well accepted in many cultures in the country, and that in many ways fuels this particular business. What are your thoughts on that? And then your explanation, please, on how elections are affecting baby factories in this country.
All right, great. So the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act and laws exists, but this can only, the value of this law is as good as how it affects the lived realities of those who need it. And so the different things that people do to stigmatize women that do not have children and all sorts of things to put them under pressure can be tackled using the Violence Against Persons Prohibition laws. But the question is, do people who need to access this have the resources to access the very expensive, access to the very expensive justice in Nigeria? That's where the problem is, because people cannot afford it. Majorly, they'll rather just not deal, and they'll keep making excuses and keep looking for other alternatives amongst other things. And so that's why I'm very particular about us tightening the access to justice procedures in Nigeria. It's very important. And then how does elections come in? To politicians, many people have value depending on the number of PVCs that you can control. So a lot of people have started recruiting minors. A lot of people have started targeting minors to get them pregnant, amongst other things. And you know that during voters registration, when the sight of a pregnant woman or a woman with a child, gives them priority attention, many children are going to be positioned in that way. They will go and get registered with the PVCs, amongst other things. These are situations we've been tracking over the years. And that's why when I say that different dynamics to this, I hope that law enforcement will be up and listening and supporting, because it's one thing for you to make an arrest today, it's another thing for you to dedicate the needed resources to prosecute, while you're helping us to protect victims, protect witnesses. Witness protection is a mess currently. Victim protection is a mess currently. So many people just keep saying, you know what, let's leave it to God. You know what, let's leave it to God. If more people got to the place where they could trust that the systems were working enough and not leave it to God, because they know that even if they lose their accommodation because they have, exposed something, if more people got to that state, knowing that the state was going to protect them, then you will see a whole lot more of these things exposed. You will see all the dynamics to baby factory as it exists in Nigeria exposed, and Nigeria will be better for it. Our economy will be better for it. Using children to bring in children, or forcing people, or raping people, or abducting people to rape them to ensure that they just keep churning out children is very inhumane. And by all means, we should all be critical stakeholders in ensuring that such practices do not thrive. The only way that can be done for more people to stop the mind your business culture is that the law enforcement systems must work properly, must recognize the support that victims need, and must recognize the support that witnesses need. That support for witnesses, if you keep joking with it, then, the court cannot manufacture evidence. The court needs evidence from people, and witnesses are critical. Victims are critical. So the support to ensure that they stay alive, critical enough to respond to or to provide with evidence to help a case to thrive is very important. I can't hammer on it too much. So we have harmful normative practices, which by all means clearly should be everybody's business to help the government ensure that they stop thriving. But I can tell you authoritatively, many people will not volunteer information that is right in front of them because they don't want to be criminalized. So protection of witnesses and protection of victims should be highly prioritized, so that if somebody sees where another person is being maltreated because she doesn't have a child, the person will hurriedly report. As long as it looks like it's going to endanger their lives, they'll wish the person well, and it's business as usual. And these are things that enable perpetrators. These are things that threaten perpetrators. The thought that there's nothing that may happen good for witnesses of.
Dorothy, I'm kind of glad that you clarified the issue with the babies, baby factory, and how the link with the elections. I want to say I'm glad it's nothing darker than what you what you had explained, because my mind was traveling elsewhere. I was beginning to think, do we still have this thinking that rituals are involved around elections, and could that be the reason?
Absolutely, that's just another dynamic to it.
Okay.
That's just a dynamic to it. But the critical part is the mass recruitment of children, adolescents, to produce babies, to make them look like adults, so that the people who are doing this have more PVCs and they look valuable to politicians. That's the critical part.
Okay, so now that we know that there is that, because it's dark, it's still equally dark, because these women are going to have these girls are going to have the babies at the end of the day, and somebody has to look after those children, and oftentimes those girls are in no position to look after those children. But let's talk about the dynamics that was involved, because you talked about witness protection and how important it is, and how there has to be support for victims, which is the section in which you have played for many years now. I'm looking at this particular story that has to do with the bishop. Let's not forget that he is supposed to be a man of God. I mean, a man of the cloth, whom we usually have a lot of respect for in this country. And now he's bagged 20 years without the option of a fine. I'm just wondering, what dynamics do you think were at play for this man to have been, for justice to have been served in the manner that it has been served? Because let's not forget, this young girl was placed in the care of his family. It meant that, his family too members of his family might have had to give witness, in this particular instance, to make sure that justice was served. It would mean that they too would have had to, live with the fact that they're not going to have a father, assuming he were convicted, and now he has been convicted. So what dynamics could have been at play, and what sacrifices do you think people would have had to make for this conviction to have been possible?
The biggest sacrifice that was made was that the truth was told. Now, one of the things that people use to blackmail others from telling the truth is, remember, forgive your neighbor, forgive as Christ forgave, all those different, using religion to blackmail other people. And in this case, the person is a religious figure to some people, and so there'll be that part of fighting with your conscience to say, God, am I offending you by outing the man of God? Amongst other things, the different dynamics to this. Now, it's important to remember that people of faith or people of religion are human beings as well, and a lot of people who are perpetrators of evil can take the form of people of faith or people of religion to perpetrate the violence. So when we go to our religious places, let's go with our heads and our hearts. If something doesn't feel right, if something feels off, if somebody complains of something, please think it twice again and say, look, why is this person saying this? Get the person to a professional. The critical things must have been done. There is the possibility that the presence of religion confuses a lot of people. But please, if you lean towards religion in any way, this is a clarion call to say, when somebody, voices something, or when you see something, it's important to say something so that you can double check it to make sure that you're not enabling somebody, to be in more danger. Many people just keep quiet, especially with people of religion, because they just don't want to get in trouble. And that's where the witness protection comes in handy. That's the link to the witness protection. I heard this, or I saw this, or I think I saw this, or I suppose I saw this, amongst other things. So we should develop systems that encourage more people to participate in volunteering what they saw, they could have heard, and everything, without any fear of repercussions, just because they are witnesses or they could have been witnesses. These things kill people every day, and nobody wants to lose their lives carelessly, I'm
also looking at the dynamics of the family. There's a very famous case that happened in Lagos, where a medical practitioner, his wife was the one who reported him. I'm sure you must have, know that particular case, and
absolutely,
how much of an uproar there was in Lagos, and the woman recounting her experience. Right now, the appeal court has, quashed the conviction which the
Yes.
lower court had given. And, even though it's unclear if the Lagos State government, and there's been no statement made so far by the Lagos, that I have seen, by the Lagos State government as to whether or not they're going to be appealing the judgment as given by the Court of Appeal, because it does raise fundamental questions as to what precisely could have gone wrong in the lower court for the conviction to have been quashed entirely. I'm just a little curious, the family dynamics that is involved when family members, especially heads of families, are involved in this. Do you think that we've sufficiently understood and we've sufficiently made provisions for people who really have the intention or, but lack the courage in some instances because they fear the repercussions for coming forward, maybe to oust a very important member of their family who also has a good standing, in the eyes of society? Yeah.
Well, this again comes to the perception of the integrity of the courts, the perception of the integrity of the law enforcement systems, the perception of the integrity of the medical systems that test people and help gather corroborative scientific evidence, the integrity of the access to justice system, the perception of the integrity of the access to justice system. This is where it comes to play. Because if so many people feel, well, because of what I have seen in this case, or in this other case that is out there, what are my chances? Then chances that they would even support in the ways they should support are dwindling. For what it's worth, powerful people, there's a lot of power dynamics. There are levels to power dynamics in everything, that has to do with access to justice. And the more powerful the person is, the more difficult it may be for the justice to come. But it's important for success stories to be shared far and wide so that, people know that, look, it is possible for justice to happen. It is possible for the right thing to happen. You may have heard a lot of things negatively, but it is possible. And it is only possible if everybody sees themselves as a critical stakeholder, whether you are the mother of the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator, whether you are the brother, whether you're the wife, whether you're the husband, whether you're the child, humanity first at the end of the day. And let's work on it with strengthened law enforcement systems just for the good of everybody. So if that mentality is spread across and everybody understands it, then more people will jump on board. Getting family to come on board could be tricky, especially if the systems are perceived to be corrupt. So the perception of the integrity of all stakeholders in the law enforcement, in the access to justice system is very important. So the reforms we've been calling for that, impact the integrity. Now is the time to do critical rethinking of how these things impact. And so with success stories like this, now is another time to say, oh, if these things were not in place, or if certain things were in place, we would have higher conviction rates. And it's not just about the higher conviction rates. What is the situation of the survivors? In this case, the survivors could be witnesses, the survivors could be the victims, So what is the situation? And we should have holistic approach towards the response to them. The Ministry of Humanitarian, the Humanitarian Ministry, the Ministry of Women's Affairs, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. It's a multi-sector collaboration thing. Ministry of Interior. Everybody has a role to play. Don't move it to just one person. So we should think critically about the roles each person can play and let everybody play to have strengthened systems. Without strengthened systems, a lot of appendages that would uphold systems that would make more people to support victims of violence will just keep crumbling.
Let me ask you this. In this baby factory, let me switch gears now to the baby factory. I'm looking at some of the visuals of the girls whom have been paraded, and you have to ask: are they seen as the perpetrators or they're seen as victims? I mean, are they survivors? Because some people will say these young girls, are they old enough to even know what it is that they're doing and the implications of what it is that they're doing? Do you think that they should be paraded? Are they seen as co-conspirators? What precisely, how are they regarded, and how do you think they should be regarded?
Well, The people who are used as carriers many times don't have a choice. In some cases, we've had where people are paid, for the services. In other places, they're abducted and kept in a place, and they're just, used to produce babies. Once they deliver a baby, the baby is taken away from them, and people start raping them again just to get them to get pregnant, amongst things. So they definitely are survivors. However, while people may make a case against the parades, there could also be the dynamic of, maybe you would see your relative and there would be a form of reconciliation, and there would be a form of, an opportunity to reconcile people, and that would feed into the reintegration process, So if it looks to them like it's gloomy, maybe that would make excuses for the so-called parading. Sometimes the parading has multiple dynamics to it. That's the thing. Or also to show people the range of people who are affected, to draw needed support. These are the dynamics of our present day reality, but we don't need to get to that point. That's why I'm advocating very strongly, in clear terms, for systems that support survivors. If we had systems that support survivors, people would not feel the need to parade, or if you parade, there are dynamics to it. As long as they are minors, you don't show their faces, amongst other things. There are dynamics. Even if they're not minors, if the person does not want the face shown, you don't show the face. And the reasons why they don't want the face shown, amongst other things. So we need to go back to holistic systems. And the best way to develop holistic systems is to ensure that we, survivors of violence, are critical stakeholders in every situation, that in every step to refine or reform the access to justice processes. We just need to ensure that they are humane. Somebody who is in a baby factory situation may have seen people paraded that way, and that would be the reason why the person would not escalate. Or that, the person just wants to preserve her own identity.
I mean, Dorothy, it is an ongoing conversation, because I know many people who, the stigma on,
That's it.
The stigma is one of the biggest issues. But how do you measure stigma against some of the other dynamics that you've mentioned right now?
Exactly.
Because you might need help, your family might be able to notice where you are. But it's an ongoing conversation. I want to be able to take you up on some of the loopholes with and I like to call people's names. And I don't care who's upset about it. The Bishop Kenneth Duke, that's the name of the man that was sentenced yesterday. And of course, it was interesting because we saw that it was our laws working. He was the judgment. He was found guilty of a 1-count charge of rape and was sentenced accordingly without an option of fine. At least that's what NAPTIP told us. And just so we can understand where this Bishop Kenneth Duke was doing his business. The church was at Dantata Zuba Expressway. After the service, of course, all the dynamics that came in was a guardianship situation, though he was supposed to be a guardian to this woman's child. So those are some of the issues. The guardianship bit, where we entrust people with our children because of whatever economic situation that we're facing right now. And then for the baby factory, these girls were recruited online, according to the statement from NAPTIP. What kind of so it was an actual recruitment process. It was online. You go and apply, and then they bring you and you get pregnant, and you know that you're going to give your child away. It brings up the question of our surrogacy laws in Nigeria and why people don't, what's the problem? Why not? Because that's, if you're going to do it the legal way, it's basically the same thing legally, isn't it? It's just that it is more organized. There are more rights being protected. Why all the shifting around? Why do we have that particular loophole when it comes to our surrogacy laws in Nigeria? And then finally, the baby factories in an estate somewhere in Ushafa, here in the FCT. I like to call places by names. And it was a tip-off from somebody in the neighborhood. Talk to us a little bit about these dynamics and what can be done going forward.
So when you mentioned here about how the baby factory thing, the people were recruited online, something, I have goosebumps on my body now. Because we're still following up with law enforcement on a lot of children that were, reported missing by their family members who got online offers for jobs, and they honored the online offers for jobs, and they got to the place and never were seen by their families again. So now my head is asking me, could that be the kind of recruitment that was done? Because when you come to surrogacy laws, it is one thing for somebody to willingly participate in something, and it's another thing for somebody to be coerced into participating in something because the person has been lured into a place where the person has been abducted or kidnapped, amongst other things. And these are dynamics. And so we need to be clear on which of the dynamics it is that this one falls under. But whichever one it is, our law enforcement agencies, up and doing about it. Towards the end of last year, we had so many of these kinds of reports from family members. My office referred several to NAPTIP specifically, because, and then one thing we had a big problem with is declaring on Interpol platform that people had been abducted. There are particular places in Abuja here where food is sold, and people just go there to lure people and say, you want job? Okay, go to so and so place. If that's how it starts, it's you want job, and many of them is not you want baby. That's the truth. So if that is the situation, if that's the dynamic, is our law enforcement on top of the issue? And then if you need to declare somebody, some of these people are taken across the borders. They're not kept in Nigeria. So if that is the situation, do we have good access to put outward and have Interpol on the matter, as soon as these things are reported? It's just a lot of things, but by and large, law enforcement needs to stop seeing those of us that are on the field with them as competition or as a problem. We're partners in progress. We have the trust of community members, and we can give good directions. We are there. Our progress is the progress of the nation. And
Dorothy, I've seen you do quite a lot of work in this regard. I want to be able to get you to talk about guardianship. At least we talked about the loophole with surrogacy laws. When it comes to guardianship, we have a very strange tradition in this country. if I'm unable to take care of my child, I give it to my uncle.
The house help thing.
But they don't want. No, let's not call them house helps. It's my sister's child. She's staying with us for a while.
Know.
But subjected to all kinds of abuse, and we see this happen all over the country. We see it's recurring. Even though now it's a little different. There's a case that we saw a few days ago where it was the girl that was in the shop and she was being beaten by her madam, and people filmed it and they put it online. So yes, the reporting system has become a little bit better. But my question has to do with the concept of guardianship. How can it be better regulated in this country? Is that something your office looks into as well? Because the truth is, if someone can take care of the child and there's someone else who can, that particular thing can
make sense.
It makes sense. But how do you ensure that it's done properly and that these children are protected?
I hear you. I hear you. The last time my office responded to a case that had guardianship issues at the bane of it was last night, by 10 p.m. last night. We got a distress call that a girl was outside and looking desperately to run away because she didn't like where she had been taken to work. The thing about it is this house help system, the house help system, if you say it is on premise of love, that you're taking in somebody's child, okay, so just come and stay with me, I'll pay your school fees. Of course, you would help out a little bit, but I would sort you out, I'll take care of you. Then the love must not be seen to be lost. Love does not hurt. Love does not harm. There's a culture shock so many times for these people who gravitate to the cities, for a better life. And so you must be willing to take them through the process. You must be willing to go through the process in humane ways. Once inhumanity creeps in, then that is where the person has, gone foul of the law. And who do we depend on to save the person who is at the mercy? It's the neighbors who hear the sounds. It's everybody, and that's why I commend a state like Lagos State that has a mandatory reporting policy. We need more states to have mandatory reporting policies, and then when mandatory reporting is done, we don't want people to say, okay, we have heard you. Can you bring the person to us? No, please, as much as possible, let law enforcement be strengthened to get on it by themselves and ensure that, Witnesses are protected, victims are protected. So far, NAPTIP is doing a lot of good, and the police has done some good as well. But we need to up the ante. The good we are doing in comparison with the bad that is being done is, there's still a lot of room for improvement. And the best way to achieve this improvement is by strengthening processes. Now, in such situations, you don't just go to attack the perpetrators. My question still always remains, what becomes of the survivor? Yesterday, because DNF has a shelter, DNF was able to give shelter to this child who was stranded because of the inhumane treatment the child complained of. In fact, she complained of an attempted rape. And because they tried to rape her here, they just moved her to the next location. And the first thing they did when they moved her was they seized her phone. For the fact they seized her phone, it means that they mean she should not communicate, she shouldn't complain, she should bear whatever it is. Any system, whether you're installing CCTV in the bathrooms of the house helps or whatever it is, because there are different dynamics to all of this, any system that subjects helps to inhumane treatments, torture, or degrading treatments, is unfair, and the law should jump in to protect these people. But is the law strengthened enough to locate these people? The best way the law can locate them is through witnesses. If witnesses speak up, in fact, till today, there was a case that we were following up since end of 2023, that the witnesses have not found protection. So until witness protection and survivor protection, including strengthening of shelters, supporting of existing shelters, to continue providing support and expansion of the shelter system, happens effectively, we're just going to be moving around chasing our tails in circles. That's what it looks like. There are systems on ground that are supporting law enforcement, but they do need to be strengthened. Yesterday night, when this case was reported to us, we didn't have a vehicle to use and go and rescue her. And in collaboration, in talks with NAPTIP, at the time it was, okay, DNF, can you keep her in the shelter and bring her to the office this morning? That is what collaboration looks like. That is how it works. And so this morning, she's going to be in NAPTIP office, and hopefully, justice will be served. Then the feedback system, when we take cases to law enforcement, how good is it? It needs to improve, because the delay, whenever there's delay, sometimes it just makes people to lose hope. And then when they lose hope, the first thing so many people think about is, maybe the case is turning, maybe they'll soon turn it against me. Let me disappear from my life. And that is how, strong evidence dissipates instead of builds up for the good of the victims. So it's still a clarion call. We need to strengthen our systems. Guardianship is fine. Help your neighbors, support your neighbors. That's fantastic. But how, if something is happening that makes the person uncomfortable, does the person have an option to speak up? If the person has an option to speak up, is there an option to not hold the person to ransom for speaking up, or not punish the person for speaking up? If those things are not there, then the person is planning an abusive situation, and the law enforcement should come in immediately and take up action.
How much progress would you say that we have made since we domesticated the VAP Act? Has it really made, how much of a difference would you say it has made?
Oh, it has made it has impacted a lot of lives. It definitely has impacted a lot of lives. But the fact that witness protection, protection orders are difficult to come by. I have never successfully, seen a protection order granted. The long time it takes to process cases, the fact that a lot of people are in so many law enforcement offices because of the salaries they need to earn, and not because they are passionate about the thing. So if a survivor should ask a basic question, you hear things like, I beg, you want to, Abi, you know one do. No, we're supposed to educate people on the rights, on legal provisions and legal procedures, because many people who need these laws do not know legal provisions and legal procedures. Okay? So if we have more dedicated people in the law enforcement offices, not just people who want to earn a salary, because we need to have our law enforcement responsive round the clock. And where law enforcement is not responsive round the clock, or able to be responsive round the clock, there are those of us on ground that can support law enforcement for the few hours that they want to close. But It's a mess if we just keeping quiet and assuming that things are not happening. Now we've got to the issue of the VAP repeal. Should VAP be repealed? Should it be amended? All those conversations cannot happen effectively if our lived realities, and when I say our lived realities, victims, right, it's violence against persons. So the people who have experienced violence, how have the systems interplayed to make us happy or not happy? What is it? What exists? Our lived realities are the true test of whether or not anything is working. The VAP Act is fine. The VAP laws are fine. But implementation is very low. And implementation is low because budgeting is budgeting has not gotten to the place where the different aspects of the app that can impact people positively are captured in budget. So until that happens, and that happens effectively and as soon as possible, VAP would just be something people would hear about and not necessarily experience. So now that a lot is happening around budgeting, please, everybody should look into how the VAP laws, are captured, or the provisions of the VAP laws are captured in the budgets.
It's interesting you make reference to the budgets because we've been saying government, ministries, departments, and agencies at the National Assembly defending their budgets and asking why, saying why they should get some more. Interestingly, though, we haven't seen NAPTIP. I don't know when they eventually made their own budget defense. But over the years, given what you know of the sector, would you say that increasingly, we have been able to put our money where our mouth is with regards to helping to fight the prohibition of trafficking in persons?
Absolutely, yes. Increasingly, we are doing that, but compared to where we should be, there's absolute room for growth. I mentioned yesterday that a victim of trafficking. In fact, how did you come to Abuja? She said her friend brought her. How did you get to the place where you are that your phone was seized? This is a minor. So the only thing that comes to play, if she will get help, she will get help from somebody who has power. And who has the power? It is law enforcement. So if law enforcement is not able to get to her at that time, the placement in a shelter is important. How are we shelter surviving? Our shelter, for instance, is at the verge of the building is about to be repurposed, and we are looking desperately for how to get support to return another building. It's difficult. People don't want to give us the buildings because they say, before you know it, we'd rather a family to come and all these things. We're not getting the support from government. We're not getting the food that, we're not getting food. We're not getting sanitary pads. We're not getting diapers. We're not getting waivers for medical bills. We're not getting a lot of things. So if the systems that exist to support survivors are not functioning, then who is picking up? Sometimes some people just come to us, and when they get the very basic, they say, don't worry. I know say if I reach the other place, I'm talking law enforcement now and other things. If you just, it not going to work for me. You don't try for me. At least I don't go hospital, all those kind of things. I know they're under. You don't give me money. You don't give me. We don't start business. We don't do this. There are different things different survivors want. If we don't invest in survivor support and victim support, and witness support, there's a lot that is just going to continue having a field day. A lot of perpetrators will continue having a field day, and that's the truth.
Well, Dorothy, we have to thank you so much for your intervention on this particular issue this morning. Dorothy Njomanze is a development expert and filmmaker. She also runs a shelter here in Abuja for victims of violence against persons. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much, Maupe, and take care. Have a nice day.
Well, switching gears now to business, and Laddie Williams is on standby to bring us Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Please stay with us.
Yo, Maupe, I'm representing Laddie today. Thank you so much, Maupe and Kayla, for that conversation. Obviously, important one, looking at the issue around human trafficking and all. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm not Laddie, I'm Ini. Ini John McCray is my name. We do 30 minutes of business right here before we head back to Kayla and Malpe. So we start from the global space. As usual, oil prices were a little changed on Friday, but headed for a weekly decline after United States President Donald Trump issued a sweeping plan to boost U.S. production and demanded OPEC lower crude prices. Look at the numbers this morning. They were down, but just a couple of minutes before I came up here, we saw a little bit of increase, and that's why we have this in the green, 0.09% for Brent, $78.36 a barrel, while WTI also gained almost the same percentage, 0.08% to $74.68 a barrel. Now we know that for the week, Brent is down 3.18% and WTI 4.28%. President Trump had declared a national energy emergency. That was on Monday, rolling back environmental restrictions on energy infrastructure as part of a sweeping plan to maximize domestic oil and gas production. On Wednesday, he vowed to hit the European Union with tariffs and impose 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico. And he said his administration was considering a 10% punitive duty on China. And if you listen to him at the World Economic Forum yesterday, he said, produce in America or pay the tariff, even though, of course, the World Trade Organization is not so happy with that. And talking about the World Trade Organization, while everyone seems to be giving a lot of attention to the tariff, which President Donald Trump has started, and they seem to be looking the way of protectionism. The Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is asking for calm and reconsideration. In fact, yesterday she said, let's just chill, and she's asking for reconsideration looking at the macroeconomic issues. She was speaking during a session tagged Debating Tariffs at the ongoing 55th World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
If we have tit-for-tat retaliation, whether it's 25%, tariff 60%, and we go to where we were in the 1930s, we're going to see double-digit global GDP losses. Double-digit. That's catastrophic. Everyone will pay. Everyone. And the poor countries will pay even more. Second, if we just do not quite tit for tat, but even a version of that. Let's say we break into two trading blocks and, we're not trading across the world, and we layer in trade policy uncertainty. We've done that work too. We're going to lose 6.4% of real global GDP in the longer term. That's like losing the economy of Japan and Korea combined. $6.75 trillion. That's far from trivial, and that will hurt everyone also. So that's why I'm saying let our members, and they are listening, I want them to listen more. Could we use the methodologies? If you think you're being harmed, you as a member are entitled to launch a series of investigations to look at what is this harm, and then to show it. After that, you can request consultation from the economy that is harming you. And then we take it from there. There are processes laid out.
That was yesterday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Coming back home now, the official FX markets are looking at our naira continue to experience sustained demand pressure as usual. And so at the close of trade on Thursday, we saw NFM down 0.09%, or rather up at 1,550 naira 48 kobo. We saw NAFEX 1,555 naira, a bit of gains at the close of trade. CBN 1,548 naira 50 kobo, also a gain of 0.29%. The CBN closing rate we saw was marginally up right there, and it seems to be the most valued of that at the close of trade. This is expected. This rate is expected even today. Now, Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves has dropped significantly in 2 weeks of this month, January, as it fell by $832.62 million between January 6th and January 21st to $40.09 billion. And that's according to latest numbers from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Before now, the gross external reserves stood at 40.92 billion January 6th, which represents a 2.03% decrease from its current level. The decline, which highlights the pressures on countries' external buffers, comes after about 5 months of relative stability and growth amidst ongoing currency market challenges and macroeconomic uncertainties. Analysts have raised concern that the FX reserves, which are currently at a 2-month low, could drop below the $40 billion level by the end of this month if the decline continues. Now, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, has said that it projects Nigeria's gross domestic product to grow by 5.5% this year. And this is expected to be driven by the federal government's ongoing economic reforms. The optimistic forecast was made at the launch of the NESG's 2025 macroeconomic outlook. During his presentation, the chief economist and director of research and development at the NESG, Dr. Olusegun Omishaki, pointed out that the growth outlook hinges on some key strategies, which include the need to control inflation, prudent government spending, improving revenue generation, boosting foreign exchange liquidity and stability of the exchange market. The NESG chief economist, however, cautions that the GDP growth could plummet to 2.7% on the other hand if some of the economic policy reforms are reversed. But I guess to note that the 5.5% is even more optimistic than what the federal government's target is, in the budget. Now, experts have continued to express optimism that Nigeria's economy will be better off in 2025 if the budget of 49.7 trillion naira is effectively implemented with key reforms despite the uncertainties that continue to impact macroeconomies and key sectors. This was the first of a discourse jointly organized by PricewaterhouseCoopers Nigeria and Business Day Media that's held in Lagos yesterday. One of the participants, chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Mr. Taiwo Idele, shared a perspective that NPR hike has worsened the economic woes of Nigeria, and that he believes that the naira is undervalued and that about 1,500 for a dollar that we see is not the fair value of the currency. Other participants at the annual roundtable on Nigeria's economic outlook also explored investment opportunities and strategies for business leaders to thrive.
The outlook, I hope it's positive.
PricewaterhouseCoopers and Business Day Executive Roundtable gathers industry leaders, policymakers, and economic experts to dissect critical issues and provide insight into the nation's fiscal future.
Has been an exceptional partner alongside Business Day.
It is premised on the need for transparency and strategic planning as Nigeria's 2025 budget is set for implementation.
If you give equality, population, 3 times more in cent or weight than derivation, I think we're just joking. And I hope we're not going to joke here this morning.
Paper presentations outline key fiscal outlooks in 2025, drivers that will shape the dynamics of key sectors, opportunities, and implications for businesses.
2025 will be a better year. GDP will grow, 3.2, 3.5. That's what we think. We think inflation will abate to 20s. FX is stable, and I'm sure we understand what stability means. It doesn't mean it's going low. It means it will be in a predictable range in which you can do your business.
In the 2025 budget, several assumptions have been made. And the first one is the benchmark price of $75. In our view as PwC, we believe that this is achievable.
The presentation set the stage for robust panel sessions. Panelists expressed their views on the implications of fiscal reform, the opportunities and risks that will emerge from the 2025 budget.
I know the central bank is going to introduce a code for FX by the end of the month. That would improve the transparency issue that you raised. Once you address transparency, you've taken up the pressure on the FX significantly.
The overall sentiment for PwC is one of positivity and optimism.
If you're not thinking digital, you're not thinking about how you're digitizing your product, how you're digitizing your go-to-market strategy, then you are falling behind. So tech, talent, and business model, those three are key strategies for success in our view going forward into 2025 and beyond.
For family businesses and the insights they can draw from this, it's really where are the opportunities that we can tap into for growth? Where are the opportunities we can tap into for productivity? And one of the major opportunities highlighted was around the exports of products across the continent.
Further to the insights shared at the roundtable, participants reiterate the significance of stakeholder engagement in shaping the budget and economic policy. The event will undoubtedly contribute to a more informed and strategic approach to the implementation of Nigeria's fiscal policies for 2025.
Well, it's a season of looking back at 2024 with the aim of giving projects, so projection or forecast for 2025. So the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they've also had theirs at their inaugural press conference for the year. The president, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, shared that while 2025 GDP growth projection reflects optimism, attention must be given to fiscal discipline, growth drivers, and enabling environment that will enhance productivity in the real sector, which requires a comprehensive strategy. The Chamber, from him, shares some recommendations that the government could employ to ensure that the benefits of the reforms are experienced by Nigerians.
Recognizing the pivotal role of food security in national stability, the Chamber urges governments to adopt a multi-pronged approach to tackling insecurity, which is critical for agricultural resurgence. By leveraging the 2025 budgetary allocations, the government should introduce strategic incentives for sub-national governments, especially at grassroots levels, to channel significant investments into agricultural mechanization, smart farming technologies, and climate-resilient crop production. 2. To stimulate sustained private sector investment in agriculture, the Chamber recommends that the central bank should introduce targeted incentives for financial institutions to expand credit facilities for agriculture and agro-processing industries. This could include risk-sharing mechanisms, favorable credit guarantee schemes, and structured partnerships with agri-tech firms to unlock untapped potentials. 3. With more expectations from the recently created Ministry of Livestock Development, the government has a unique opportunity to implement innovative and data-driven processes and policies.
A whole lot going on there, looking at the macroeconomy of Nigeria and expectations, projections for the year 2025. Of course, we'll continue in that line of conversation right here on Business Morning, but let's take a breather. When we come back, we do have a conversation on that. Join us again. Welcome back to watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily, where we do business, of course, for just about 30 minutes. Now, just before that break, we're looking at economic forecast for the year 2025. But a lot of ease jump out at you when you read those forecasts if the government will sustain the reforms on the one hand, look at challenges that might hamper the benefits of those reports. And one of that seems to be infrastructure. So Lagos, I guess, the commercial capital of Nigeria, ought to take stock and see what they need, especially when you look at the rural and urban population in Nigeria. Lagos holds a whole lot of that, expectedly being the commercial capital. Let's do Lagos for a bit. Before we look at that issue of rural-urban migration and closing the gap to have a more inclusive development in the year 2025. That's the conversation waiting for us after this report.
It's the second time in a week that the Lagos State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Mr. Tokunbo Wahab, is out for an inspection exercise. This time, the commissioner and his team visit market areas in Lagos to see the level of environmental infractions going on. Obviously, this area is unkempt. Akmogbon Under Bridge is another spot taken over by poultry and cattle businessmen. The commissioner asks them to vacate the space. The aerial view of Ibuteru shows the rooftop of structures and makeshift shops built on drainage setback. The drainage has also been covered with wood planks by people who occupy the space to sell their goods, and government says such acts will not be tolerated.
You can't and we won't allow anybody make this state an operation state where life becomes nasty, British and short. These are public infrastructure built for public use. Now they have made them shops, and we have to stop it, and we are stopping it right away.
The commissioner warns market operators to maintain designated market spaces as allocated by the local governments and keep the environment clean.
Before now, the governor had awarded the contract for the regeneration of Lagos Island, the drainage system, and then the road infrastructure. However, we noticed some areas were not part of it, and they are already captured in the different projects. So we came in this point to assess them, and I'm glad you were there with us. People had willfully built to narrow down our collectors' paths, turned them to the trading points, trading on most of them, and blocked them at some point. So what we have asked them to do is kindly come and serve the notices, and then let them remove these contraventions, so we can clean up and then do the right thing for the public.
48 hours relocation notice has been issued by the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources to illegal stall owners on drainage setbacks. If not adhered to, government says the area will be cleared for free movement around the marketplace.
Well, the picture there doesn't look so much like the commercial capital of Nigeria, right? But a whole lot of people still flock to Lagos. I guess that's putting a strain on infrastructure, and we see the population trying to create space for themselves, which is what Lagos State government is checking at this time. Now, in 2023, numbers from the World Bank shows that about 45% of Nigeria's population lived in the rural areas. While this is a decrease from what we had in 2022, about 46.5%. Most Nigerians, of course, we know the food come from the rural areas. We have more poverty there, and so we see the migration to the urban putting pressure on the infrastructure in those urban areas. Top on the list, Lagos, and then the federal capital, Abuja, and all of that. What's the need to balance this population? That's what Daisy Omokungbe is speaking with us. Daisy Omokungbe is the Executive Director of PROMAD and joins us from Bradford. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria. My pleasure to be on the show this morning.
So we talk about inclusive development as a way of having sustainable development, but what are the pros and cons of the imbalance in population between rural and urban areas of a country?
Pardon?
I was asking the pros and cons of having imbalance between the rural and urban population or residents.
Yeah, so the imbalance in between the rural and urban centers in Nigeria, or urban cities and towns in Nigeria, is as a result of so many things. You could talk about economic opportunities, you could talk about infrastructures, you could talk about availability of healthcare services, and you've rightly mentioned the issue of migration, as well as the issues of availability of technology and innovation services. All of these, when you look at them in depth, it contributes to why we are having the movement from the rural areas to the urban areas. And this is because people naturally will always move to where things appear to be better in terms of opportunities that can be leveraged, and people will move. But in Nigeria, the case is the same, but it is much more because we are having some issues around our governance, the way government design policies, and the ways the 3 tiers of government have been working in Nigeria in the past years. And if not because of the recent pronouncement by the Supreme Court, you see that the closest tiers of government is the local government, very close to the people. But in the last 20 years, the local government has almost been dead and buried in terms of governance and administration. And if that has been happening, it means that little or nothing in terms of bringing policies up, in terms of activities and projects and programs of government that will be able to facilitate infrastructural development, access to health care services, educations in the rural areas have been close to zero, because the arm of government that is closer to them, that's supposed to deliver these services, are almost in a death situation. So, but thanks to the Tinubu-led administration that have approached the Supreme Court of the land to ask that local governments need to be what? Independent. And we begin to see that the government is working towards that, and the states, by what we have seen, at a reasonable extent, they are cooperating to ensure that this comes to stay. But then there are things, a whole lot of things that needs to follow in terms of ensuring that the local government will not just have access to their funds directly, because it's one thing to have these funds available to them. It is another thing to have credible people at this level of governance to be able to drive development agenda and carry the people along, execute projects that really meet the needs of the people, not focusing on frivolities, buying more cars for local legislators or marrying more wives, and all of these issues needs to be dealt with.
So how do you think it should be dealt with? Because I hear you sounding optimistic, like a whole lot of people who have spoken about the year 2025, but you have that if again, that yes, it should begin from the local government, and we seem to have started with the, empowerment of the local government council, but how do we manage that empowerment so there's no abuse? What do you think can be put in place for that?
Okay, so the data available so far, for instance, the 32 states of the Federation have presented and approved their budget for 2025, and these 32, according to the data program that I've been able to have access to this moment, we have the budget totaling 23 trillion naira. This is not too big, but it is something that, if well implemented across these states and across the local levels, is going to translate to development. So, looking at the empowerment at the local government level, organizations, non-profit organizations, NGOs, CSOs, government at the federal level that have been able to champion this needs to come up with capacity building programs for local government executives, local government legislators, to really understand what they should be doing at the levels of that governance. Because it is one thing, like I said, to have these resources for them, but would they be able to design budgets? In the last few years, we have seen only few local government have budgets that they will be working with on an annual basis. So going forward, we should be having local governments that will be able to design budgets in a way that really listen to the people, collect data, analyze those data to be able to see what the data is saying in terms of what the people need and where are these needs coming from. How should government focus on that? So we ensure, so that we can ensure that this funding that is the funding that is available can be channeled to real activities that will enhance growth and development. On the other hand, improving agriculture is very important, and that can be linked to the budget that I talked about. And then balance of politics and governance. We have seen in the past where chairman, whether caretaker or elected, only focuses on politics, using the instrument of office to destabilize cities and towns under their leadership. This is not, we should move away from such practices. Going forward, there should be the need of balancing politics and governance. For me, I always advise that there is needs to balance politics and governance, because the reason why we elected people into office is for the purpose of governance, administration of our common resources to be able to meet the needs of everyone. That is the reason of governance. But then, performing in office as an elected official or appointed official is not enough. You also need to balance the politics, because if that does not happen, you could see that one performing governor or one performing local government chairman can be removed overnight if the politics is not balanced. So for me, going forward, there is need for us to balance politics and governance at the local level. And this will enhance that we have the political will, and also we have the capacity on the governance side to be able to marry the two and deliver development to the people. On the other side, also, citizens have a great role to play in terms of ensuring that their local government chairman use this direct funding that is coming to them now to actually power development by ensuring that they participate, ask for accountability and transparency in how these funds will be deployed to the activities of local government at their levels.
Yeah, Daisy, I guess that is why we had the structure where the governors were put like directly on top of the local government council. But we saw that system abused in a lot of ways and in a lot of states. So now, if we say we want to keep the local government chairman or councillors in check, I wonder what structure you think we can put in place to ensure that, because as you noted, having the fund is one thing, but using the fund effectively is another. You mentioned the role of the citizens, but sometimes it does seem like even the citizens can get really sentimental and just want to satisfy their personal needs and not look at the bigger picture of the council as a whole.
Okay, so trying to address that, for me, the issues that we need to look at is following the principle of participatory governance. If you look at the design or the creation of local government, it has to do with community activities. And then if we have to really follow that principle, there is need to instill participatory governance approach in our local government system. And when I'm talking about this, is a situation where all stakeholders, not just the politician, all stakeholders will be able to come together on one table and be able to say, look, this is what we are working towards in the next 4 years. And then how do we break down this into different structures, maybe for the next 1 year, for the next 2 years, for the next 3 years, and for the next 4 years. So when we have all of this, and then we're able to set in place what we call the key performance indicators, and then the tracking and monitoring system. And that is where the role of these citizens comes into play, in ensuring that everything that has been put into the plan will be monitored and tracked. Not that when the fund comes, the chairman will just do whatever he likes when he brings together the councillors, maybe one of the top few influential community leaders. So we should move away from this. It is only when we work in collectivism that we can advance the development at the rural level and be able to provide the essential social services that will drive healthcare, that will drive education, that will drive agricultural innovation and agribusiness, which the rural area is known for. When we were growing up, we saw how local government was central to issues of governance and development. If I tell you now, the primary school where I started from in my local area, then in our village where my father was doing farming, is no longer in operation because people have moved their children from that local community to at least a town where they are sure that they will get better education. So these are the issues that needs to be addressed in terms of how we govern the local government. Yeah. And local government also needs things around building structures and frameworks for governance to work, because the way it is right now, if we continue with that, with the kind of funding that is coming to them, we might not get the needed result that the local government autonomy is supposed to bring to the table.
Yeah, it does sound like, even with the last example that you gave, that this could be beyond the local government. For instance, you talked about schools. We see a lot of scenarios where people move, for instance, to Lagos. Lagos Island is crowded because of the offices around there. You are in the UK, and I know that over there and other Western developed countries, people stay in areas that, I mean, look at Davos, where the world is meeting. It's like our village, you know. So it goes back to the issue of infrastructure. And I wonder how much or how fast that can be done to discourage this rural-urban movement.
Okay, so infrastructures is not what you develop overnight. It must be powered by effective planning, and this planning has to do with first listening to what is on ground, trying to investigate, trying to use data, collect data, and analyze this data. What exactly do we need? So when we get all of that done, then we can move to the pace of the effective planning that I talked about, where this can be driven by budget. So when the budget comes and we are able to get that passed and approved, then how do we implement? So this takes a lot of time, but then what is most important is starting and then being committed to it to ensure that we get the needed result. So in stopping migration, infrastructure is very key. Like I said earlier, people tend to move to where they think that they will have access to better things or basic things of life. So for instance, we have been talking about improving agriculture over the years, but then where are the infrastructures for people or young people to invest in agriculture? How many local government have one tractor across the country? Just one, let's say one, all around. 774 local government. How many of them have one functional tractor? And are we expecting young people who have gone to the universities or polytechnic or college of education to come back and be practicing farming the way their father or parent practiced farming? So all of this needs to be taken into consideration. And if we are to stop or reduce migration from rural areas to urban areas, which is very important at this moment because of food inflation, means that people are no longer producing foods in our farms because they are moving. So if we have to reduce that, we need to provide an enabling environment that will ensure or help young people to move into agriculture, even our elderly ones that are there, to scale on their farming practices and be able to drive development, support food security in the country. And you will see, just recently we have seen the price of how the prices of cocoa is soaring. So what is our government, the local government and the state government doing about this in order to ensure that we produce more cocoa, we generate more jobs, we generate more income for the country, and be able to sustain our development efforts?
All right, we do hope we will see the results of more attention, given to this, especially as you mentioned there, your last point, agriculture, food security is number one on the list. Thank you so much, Executive Director of PROMAD, Daisy Omokungbe, for your time this morning.
I'm grateful. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, just before we head back to Sunrise Daily Studio, tell you that the market yesterday ended in the red, 0.05%. We lost at 103,000 level for the oil share, closed at 102,788. Activity was mostly green, but we had volume in the red, and we saw banking as the only survivor again yesterday. Second trading session that we have, that banking gained 1% because of the fugaz, obviously, consumer goods, industrial goods, insurance, oil and gas, all ended in the red. We'll see what the market numbers will have at intraday when we will do this again, and then we'll have 55 minutes during Business Incorporated. I'm Ini John Mekwa, handing you back to Kela and Markwe, and I'll see you at 1 p.m. Thanks, Ini, right there on Business on Sunrise Daily. But back to our conversation. We will be taking our conversation to the United States. And that's because there is some pushback on a lot of the things that the president is doing. And joining us for this conversation on pushbacks of the Trump presidency executive orders, we have joining us from Coventry, Mr. Jermaine Sonwolu, joining us right there. He's the head of Lagos State Office for Diaspora Affairs. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so yes, Jermaine Sonwolu is joining us from Ibadan, and then joining us from Coventry, we have Mr. Ralph Obasoge, who's a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Very much. Good morning.
Okay, so let's begin with the two of those orders at least. You can tell us if there's more. I'm going to start off with Mr. Ralph Obasoge. At least two of those orders are the ones that really affect a lot of Nigerians. At least we've heard a lot of Nigerians talking about them, and that is the refugee status, the stopping of the acceptance of refugees, and the birthright citizenship bit. What kind of kickbacks do you think these orders will get from the courts and then from civil society and other people who may have issues with this one that affects a lot of people in Nigeria?
It's something that we have to be a bit pragmatic about. When it comes to the issue of the non-documented migrants, the rights for them to actually seek leave to stay back there is a bit far-fetched, okay? But the one that is a bit unsettling is the withdrawal of the birthright citizenship. And that is at the core of the American Constitution, and actually is the very essence of what America is, what makes America, because almost 3/4 of the population are all migrants or descendants of migrants. And when you look at citizenship ordinarily, without looking at legal implications, citizenship ordinarily, once you have legal status and you are born in the country, all right, most countries will grant you citizenship. So if I don't think, I beg to be corrected here, if, for instance, the Constitution is enshrined in the Constitution that you will be a citizen if you were born in the US, then they will need a constitutional amendment. And you know already a federal judge has already granted a temporary blockage of that executive order. And so it's going to be a struggle, but you know Trump is stubborn. Is going to most likely still push ahead. And at the end of the day, most of the federal judges were appointed by him. Most of the federal judges. So he may be able to then find sympathy in some of the judges. It's just for us to watch and see how it unfolds. A lot of, on all other orders, I will let my colleagues speak. There are about 7 or 8. He has about 22 orders already. But there are about 7 or 8 that has implications.
Let's get to talk to the head of Lagos State Office of Diaspora Affairs. I may have erroneously said kickback instead of pushbacks. That's what I meant to say. Mr. Jermaine Sonolu, these orders and the impact it will have on the Nigerian people, especially with a lot of people looking at them and thinking, well, what is going to happen to the future for my children? You have the right to choose where you want to give birth to your children, where you want them to be citizens of. But, with the stand that the President Trump administration has, are there fears that Nigerians who are exploring that option should be having right now? And are those fears founded?
Thank you very much for inviting me to your program this morning. I'm currently in Ibadan. I'm doing my research and diaspora international studies at the Institute of African Affairs here. And a new era has come for geopolitics, America, and also the world as we know it now, with the emergence of President Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. And interesting times. We must understand it from different perspectives, from the perspective of foreign policy, the perspective of the American people, what they want and what they don't want, and also for the perspective of migrants, regular or irregular migrants who are going to that land of dreams, as they call it, America, and to understand that things have really changed. The views I share here are mine, fully don't represent that of the government of Nigeria, of Lagos State. It's just my view, because I interact with a lot of diasporans, my personally being one, and who have returned. And I know the major concern that people have is that what's going to happen moving forward. You said in your, as you introduced me just now, that people have the right to choose where the child will be born. But I also say that the country of residents also, or the country they are going to, also has a right to choose the criteria for which people can come into their country and claim citizenship. I know in Nigeria, to become a citizen of Nigeria, it takes a couple of years. Even the United Kingdom too, it takes a couple of years. America is one of the countries in the world, and people love it for that, whereby you can have your baby as you land in America, get a 6-month visa, in Nigeria, go there, travel and deliver your child, and they become automatic American citizens, and over time they're able to enjoy the benefits. And of course, when they hear of such change in policy towards migrants, people are going to object towards it. But President Trump has a foreign policy that focuses on America first. Their national interest is all about America first. They are focused on delivering the promises that they gave to those who voted overwhelmingly from them. So I don't think you will blame him for doing that. So I really believe that many diasporans who are lost in America will begin to adjust. Those who are irregular will begin to make changes, because we have seen a crackdown on many irregular migrants, which ICE took a swooping move few hours after President Trump was elected to actually remove a specific kind of category of people, which Trump wants to emphasize, saying that it is those who are criminal, those who are very, very offensive, who are a danger to national security, again, that they are taken out. So I'm sure if people hear this, they will know that it's not just about every random person that they will pick and they will take or they will report, but those who are really who are perpetrating crime, or who are known to be perpetrating crime in whatever country they are. So people who are doing wrong things should be cautiously aware of President Trump's new agenda for the American people. And I really believe when it comes to refugee status too, based on international law, people, you are eligible to claim for refugee rights, if you have been persecuted in your home right, in your hometown, or asylum seeking, for whatever reason you may have, you could apply legally and you'll be granted that status. But what we were seeing in America was that people were just crossing the border, and they were entering and they were doing all manner of things to the American people, and also people were taking advantage of the immigration system under the Biden era. So I really want to see it from a balanced point of view that President Trump is just acting for what he believes is the best interest for those who voted for him.
Basoge, I want to come back to you on this. I mean, listening to Mr. Jermaine, it does seem like, I think in many ways it's time for us to start looking at how we can solve our problems ourselves. You have to start looking towards the leadership in your own country, because at least from what we're hearing from the American president. It's not just Nigeria. Most of these executive orders, if I was seeing the president of Mexico, a little worried about the designation of terrorist status for drug offenses, because that would mean that some kind of offensive can be carried out on them as a sovereign nation, and you know, how it affects so many parts of the world. But when it comes to Nigeria and our peculiar situation of wanting to always leave the country in search of greener pastures, should there be some kind of change in the mindset of the Nigerian people? And what can our government do as it is right now to ensure that people, you know, start to actually have more faith in our country, stay back here, get things working? And do they have the capacity to even give the better life that the Nigerians are asking for when they want to leave this place?
I think I can't agree less with Jaman. He has put it in a very good context. Okay. Now the issue is that I have not had the opportunity to analyze. I don't think it's been made public the contents of the executive order on the withdrawal on birthright citizenship, because there are two strands. Okay. Like I told you, for those, because it does seem that it was a blanket executive order for those who are citizens. I don't think that will apply to them. Those who are legally residents, okay? But the issue now called as first Nigerians, we are talking of illegal migrants, those who are not documented. And like Jaman said, every country has a right to determine what they will do to grant you citizenship or grant you rights. And because of the dislocated, because of the fact that the Nigerian society has not provided the very basic things that will make people live in this country. People are Jabi, like you know, all right? And we abuse everything. Let us do some self-introspection. You recall that Margaret Thatcher, in her time, withdrew this birthright citizenship from Nigeria, from all migrants, until you spend about 5 years in the UK. The Republic of Ireland was a haven for Nigerians. Anywhere the opportunity is, because of the lack of opportunities and the dehumanization back home, Nigerians go there in droves, and it becomes a problem. All right? So, talking about problems, I do not think the political class is willing to solve the problem the way I say it. I don't want to make political comments. For now, it is just that for those who have been there, who have not been documented, they should begin. There were even warnings 4-5 months ago to say if you are undocumented, if you are there illegally, begin to take steps to get yourself documented and regularize your stay. At the end of the day, you cannot fault Trump because this is what Trump is doing, exactly what a majority of Americans want. You recall again, sometime when Obama was in his first tenure, people forget that Obama also actually ordered a lot of deportations. It's not a Republican thing, it's not a Trump thing. Trump may be very direct and crude in the way he does his things. So, Nigeria, what should we look forward to? Can our political leaders begin to create the conditions that will make Nigerians stay back in this country? That is the first thing. And is the political class going to do it immediately? No. But what we see. Then what will Nigerians do? Try and regularize your stay. We abuse everything. So people cannot just go. People want to give birth and they want citizenship for their children. They just go on a visitor visa, you give birth and come back and your child is an American. I think what Trump is saying is that has to stop. And going forward, people should then know that this is no longer a tea party the way it is.
Let me go to Mr. Jermaine and take this question to him, because you've talked about how migrants, particularly irregular migrants, need to regularize their stay and do the legal and proper thing. Do you think that we should extend services to them in this regard?
I totally agree with you, okay. Because this is an important fact that has to be addressed when it comes to irregular migration. I know some organizations in Nigeria are trying to address this issue because we have to educate ourselves. You know, I know the National Orientation Agency is doing the best they can to encourage people to stay and engage in meaningful endeavors here. It's important because, you see, people are leaving the country for reasons. best known to them. But people are also returning to the country. Many you must have seen what happened in the recent in December, 30 December, whereby a lot of people came to the Center of Excellence in Aquatic Center, Lagos State. They found it a place for home for entertainment, for fun. And that's because of many factors, but I'll point one or two. It's because the living conditions, the cost of living, even in America, is not so favorable to many of them right now. And many people, they are looking for places whereby they can have more value and feel more connected. And so it may be an opportunity for, even as America may seem the way it is right now, many Nigerians are going to start looking back. Those who are irregular are going to start thinking, okay, how can I...
Oh dear, looks like we have some technical issues there with Mr. Jermaine's connection. But let me quickly go to Mr. Obasoge. Okay, I think Jermaine is back now. I think it's back. Yeah. We lost you briefly. Let me just confirm this. Are you saying that, because you were making an analogy with Dirty December and how cost of living has gone up, I'm wondering, are you saying that we should extend services to help migrants, especially those who have gone illegally, regularize their stay? Because some people will say part of what we have been doing with diaspora services is making sure that our citizens in diaspora are okay where they are. If they're in distress, we're able to bring them back home, etc. But do you think that our responsibilities extend towards giving them services to help regularize their stay in another land?
Yes, I totally agree with that point. We must extend services. I'm sure the Nigerian consulate in both Atlanta and also in Washington, they are doing all they can to be able to accommodate. So I'm looking at the Ministry of Interior and also the Nigerian Diaspora Commission to see how they can support the migrants who want to come back. And also from here too, we need to start educating people more about, before they leave, what they need to do. And they should also be reassured that it's not just going there and being pregnant and going to deliver, that things have changed. And there's even a situation that really occurs with many migrants who go there for holiday. They would have a baby there, and for one reason or the other, maybe they enjoy some benefits or some discounts. They are now barred from coming back, even though they deliver their child there and the child gets citizenship. So there's a lot of things going on that the Trump administration is going to do to change how it is. The diaspora is a very, very important population for us here in Lagos, because we realize that they play a crucial part, as I was mentioning about the Dirty December and the impact they've had on the Lagos economy. We want to let them know that Lagos is welcome. Lagos is home for the diaspora, and they can come and benefit from the policies that we have put in place here to accommodate them. The return experience is not just about coming to have fun, but you can come and live in Lagos. It may sound funny, but it is an opportunity for us to be able to accommodate us and all accommodate the diaspora who are going to be returning, and those who may be there, they should be getting some understanding by the consulate. Another thing to notice now about these diaspora relations is that President Donald Trump has also dissolved the African Diaspora Engagement Council. They call it, we can give acronym ADORD, which had people like Oguminike, the PSP and WNBA basketballer, who was part of that council in Nigeria. We had one or two Nigerians there too. And the importance of that is that he has changed his way towards diaspora engagement. Let's hope that he reinstates it with new vigor and new energy to engage the diaspora community, because the Nigerian diaspora in America is not a diaspora that you just ignore. It is one of the most educated and the most strongest diaspora communities in America. A lot of doctors, a lot of tech entrepreneurs, a lot of chemical and mechanical engineers. They are the pride of the diaspora there. And we know that there are some people who do some funny things there too, but majority of us in the diaspora are doing great things. So apart from the few that may have challenges, we should look at the positive light, and let's hope that President Trump will be able to appreciate the Nigerian, the African diaspora as a whole, and begin to pass policies that will favor them. And also, if they're going to return, I know some countries like Germany, but if you voluntarily decide to return back to your country of origin, they give you some money, they help you settle down, and all those kind of things. So let's see if Donald Trump will give incentives for those who want to return, which I believe is a good idea. And also, he will take the diaspora community not as funny migrants, but as an asset to the American state.
We're totally out of time. We have to thank you so much for your contributions. Jermaine Sanwo-Olu, who is the head Lagos State Office of Diaspora Affairs. Thank you so much for your contribution. And we also have to thank you, Mr. Ralph Obasoge, who joined us all the way from Coventry via Zoom. Thank you so much for your contributions as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mom.
Well, we see your feedback. Kolarewaju, also known as Maximus on X, and also Professor Nakena. We have to thank you for sending me your feedback and for being a part of our program this beautiful Friday morning. I know Kayla is singing, thank God it's Friday in her head somewhere. But thank you so much for watching. We wish you a very splendid weekend. Enjoy your Friday. I'm out, Yusuf. Have a great weekend ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa.